This is
Positively Hygiene
with your host, Amber Lovatos,
Amy Prenti,
and Angela Doe.
Listen on as we dive into the positive of dental hygiene. I was at work this week. Actually, it's my first week back at work. I took 5 weeks off for my IVF stuff, which I'm not pregnant, but that's a different topic. But anyways, I went to work on Monday and I ran out of water. And so I asked my boss, I was like, hey, there's some water bottles in the fridge. Can I grab one? And she's like, yeah, and I have some more back here. And I just thought the stark difference between that and when I was at my toxic job. There was one time where a bunch of people were doing a water challenge and a challenge to drink, I don't know, 32 ounces of water or whatever. And so our boss got a wind of it and we got a company-wide email telling us that we should be respectful of our job's water and bring our own water to work.
What?
Yes. that we shouldn't. And we had those big old things of water. You had to whatever. She's to not be using the company resources for our water challenge. Instead of being oh my gosh, how awesome that our job is our people at our work are trying to get healthy. We're a healthcare ministry. We have a medical dental clinic and a pharmacy. We talk about preaching about health, but your staff is doing a water challenge, trying to encourage each other to drink water. And instead of you being that's so great, let's do that. Maybe let's do it as a company. They're don't drink our water. Felt so strongly about it that we had to get an email to not drink their
Meanwhile,
water.
there's other companies too. You hear from office settings that they'll have either a weight loss game or something amongst their team, or a water drinking. Who's the first team to reach this health point. There's other ways of encouraging, but no, not here.
When I worked at the University of Texas. They had teams where to weight loss teams, or steps team, and
yes.
you had or there were different things that you could do. I was the worst. I was nobody wanted me on their team because I was not the best. But it did. It was encouraged us to take the steps. It encouraged us to do things after work. Actually, this is really cool. If I ever have my own practice with my husband, I want us to do this someday. But at UT during the winter break time when we didn't have any students, the University of Texas hired a massage person. And she brought in her her chair massage, one of those at the mall that had those people in the middle who give you your massages. So it was that. It wasn't a table, but it was a chair, and you could schedule massages for free at work.
Oh, that's nice.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, that's really nice.
It's I could.
I've seen on Facebook some hygienists that post that that's the appreciation gift from their boss.
That is such a great appreciation
bring in
gift.
A massage therapist in the office and then just rotate out.
That's how you know the toxic versus the respectful office. It's just how much is this office willing to invest in you and value and support you? Because yes, you can look at it from our standpoint. Wow, I'm getting a free massage. But really, are you really? Or are they just trying to value you and just really take care of you so that you last longer? Are they going to burn you to the ground, or are they going to invest in you to keep you? I think that's the difference between toxic offices.
That's true. I mean, same thing with instruments, right? And I do think that sometimes people just need to be told, because dentists, they don't do hygiene like we do hygiene, and they weren't taught hygiene like we were taught hygiene, at least, right? So they might not know oh, you need to replace your instruments every 6 months, every year, depending on how many you have and how often you use them, right? You just need to have those conversations with them. But if they truly value you and the work that you do, you'd hope that they would invest in your instruments and the things that they are in your body. Because I think that's one of the causes of suffering from burnout is the pain that our bodies are going through. Because I'll say this time during IVF stuff has been really, really hard on my body. I'm just older. It's just been hard for me to recover. And I actually on Monday I supervised dental hygiene students. That was kind of my role. But I still had to see some patients. And after 2 patients, my back, I'm still suffering from Monday. That was 2 days ago. And that makes me cranky. When my body's hurting, I'm uncomfortable. I'm not happy. I'm not working as hard with my patients. And if you're having to deal with body physical pain, that's hard on you, also mentally. But I feel sometimes that's how people feel with their body. They're just so tired because of the way that your chair is set up, because of the instruments, and that can get so frustrating.
Well, when we're physically and mentally exhausted, we're not at our best. We're not performing at 100%. And I think as hygienists, we always want to do our best for our patient. So then there's that fact. And then for me, like I tear myself down even more being like, why am I not at 100%? Why can't I do this for my patient? And that was, I was at my job for 17 years, but I got so tired from the commute. I know that sounds simple. And then I know some people can commute an hour, like one way, and that's fine. But my life had changed to where that wasn't suitable for me anymore. And I was tired. I had my kids are young, and I just couldn't work through that. And then if I'm at work tired, I'm not at my best. And I just feel like I'm not giving the practice what they deserve. And that wasn't fair for either of us. So I had to, make that decision to leave, which was not an easy one. But yeah, when you're physically and mentally exhausted, you just can't be there the way you want to.
That's why I always feel I need that decompression time in between patients. I always need that 5 to 10 minutes, because what patient A needs, they might need me to be a much different clinician than what patient B needs me to be. Like maybe their communication style is different. Maybe they want this from me, or maybe they're just heavier on calculus, and, maybe, there's so many variables that go. No patient is the same. So for us, no responding clinician really can be the same appointment to appointment, So I always need that. Like they always say, like, if anything's not working, like power it off and power it back on. Like I feel like I need that reset in between each patient just so I can be my best self and show up for what they now need.
Actually, I haven't heard of that power on and power off, that reset, but I like that. I like that mentality.
Well, I think if a computer's not working,
yeah,
everyone, you just turn it off, turn it back on, like wait 30 seconds, and
that's
then turn it back on. That's
the first thing customer service tells you. Well, when you talk about how each patient is different, you have to give them a different personality, a different response, a different performance almost. I think that's why people are reluctant to work in pediatrics, because you get them so often and you have to adjust quickly as well, because you don't always get that downtime. You just go from chair to chair.
It goes by really fast, though.
It does. Well, when you have patience.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Sometimes it can be slow, but it goes by faster because you're just, you have something to do. And I've heard stories about some people in pediatrics actually someone just tagged me in someone's post about how they work at a pediatric office and they have 2 dentists. I don't know about the hygienist count. I don't have the whole story. But that they were seeing like 15 patients an hour.
Oh my gosh.
And they only had like 5 assistants. And they're like, is this healthy? Is this right? And I haven't responded yet, but I'm like, ooh, like,
how?
Yeah. So just knowing, I would say I don't even know the whole story, but that's a lot of red flags, right? And I would say that's just ultimately toxic to your health, to your mentality. And then also, I don't want to like speak for the kind of care they're giving, but you can imagine that it can be better if you have more time with the patient.
I did work for a pedo office one day that was actually, I never counted. My mind was just such a blur, but I know the assistants would grab the patient from the front waiting room, bring them in, do the x-rays, and then they actually had the operatory set up like an ortho kind of thing. It was just chair. And as soon as the kid was there, you just had to find an open mouth, sit down, polish, give oral hygiene instruction, and then get up and then look for another person that was ready. But it was so impersonal. I never knew their names. I never knew their charts. I never knew anything about how school was going, or I just felt like I was brewing later on dental anxiety, because here they have this girl hovering over them for 2 minutes. They don't know they don't really know anything about what I think we have to offer.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it was good. And at the end, actually the dentist said to me, she goes, "Oh, I'd love to have you back. Not many people can keep up, but you did really well today." And I told her, I'm never coming back. It's like, it's just not my style. I was like, I'm sorry. And then I never went back, of course, but those places exist.
Yeah. No, I've been real fortunate with the PD. And I think I pick and choose as well where I work, to where the dentist like respects my time with the patient. So yeah, I do take time to talk if it's needed, and they understand. So if we're behind, they'll pick up the next one. It's not like, why aren't you moving faster? It's never like that, which I really appreciate. I'm glad there are offices like that out there.
Yeah.
But Amy, last time you were talking about the the job you got right after hygiene school.
Yes. I thought it was like like what's that gem in Aladdin? You know, like the ruby that little monkey's going out. I thought it was that. I thought I had like the coveted position because it was handed to me from faculty, you know, and then it was, you know, they hired me before I had my license. I felt like it was like just the best thing ever. And I didn't know how bad it was because I didn't know what else was out there. But I guess like looking back, I feel like offices so many times can be like relationships. Like you have your first boyfriend and it's just, you're so excited. Someone loves you. They're telling you you love you. You're giving love notes or like this or that. Like you don't know. You know, like in the beginning, you think you're going to marry this person. You think, you know, to put it back to an office,
It's
you
a
think you're going to
honeymoon
be.
phase.
Yeah, honeymoon. That's exactly what it is. And that's what I felt. And I was, oh man, like how lucky am I like to be here and to feel this, feel that. And then I would start.
You feel loyalty to them because you feel like, oh, they took me in when I like didn't know anything. And you stay there longer than you think you need to stay.
Right. I felt like I owed them a favor, especially because actually when I came on too, and I think this is part of what mentally played me, is a lot of the other hygienists that were there were all 50 plus. So in my frame of mind, I'm thinking, okay, these women have been here, like it has to be a good office because I see these, you know, these women working here that are getting their kids through college.
But I think that that's a different, also like generational thing.
Yeah.
Because like even my boss, you know, when I left one of my other jobs, which I actually really liked and didn't like it, there was some toxic issues there. But my boss was like, see, that's the difference between like millennials and I don't know, Gen X, I guess. And she was like, is that, you know, we're loyal. And I was like, I would have stayed if you had like supported me. And there was this person who I worked with who would come into my office and like scream at me and berate me.
Oh my gosh.
And I had reported to my boss, who I love and I love her. I loved her. I do still very much like respect for her and like the mentorship she gave me, but they didn't do anything. They're basically like, what do you want us to do? And I didn't feel supported in that and like that situation. And I wasn't going to go into like, say in a situation where I wasn't like supported or appreciated enough to like for them to like stick up for me or set boundaries for me just because that person was louder than me, you know?
Right.
And so I said that to her. I was like, you know, I would have stayed if I had felt supported. And the place where we worked wasn't perfect, but yet people stayed there. And I think it might be like a generational thing.
Well, I think that's what they say too. The stereotype of millennials is we are the me generation. And I think that's how it's perceived when the generation before us was so selfless.
Yeah.
They were too selfless. And then they dealt with these toxic situations because they saw their parents go through like Great Depression or great, like, you know, that was just like, if you are lucky enough to have a job,
But
don't
I
you dare
love me
lose it.
some Gen Zs, man.
Yeah.
I do.
They take it a step further.
They take a step further.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, okay, guys. But I'm going to hire a like social media manager agent to like help me get more like gigs and stuff. And I've worked with her already a little bit in like different aspects. And I'm sometimes like, I don't know if I should do this. She's like, Amber, you're the talent. Like you like demand, which she hypes me up. She's like vocal. She'll say all the things that I'm too afraid to say. That sometimes need to be said. And so I think there's like value in that too.
Yes.
But yeah, like sometimes just because somebody stays, I guess the point is like, just because somebody stays there a long time doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good practice to be at. All of that to say that if somebody's staying at a practice for a long time, it may not mean that that practice is a good practice. It may just mean that it's like a generational thing. It may just be that they're also scared of leaving. It may just be that like this practice like works for them, but doesn't work for you. And that's okay too, right? Like, I don't know, like what I need is different than what you need. Like obviously Angela loves pedo. Obviously Abby loves like public health.
Well, Amber, you talked about like loyalty, right? And I read an article a couple weeks back that businesses don't reward loyalty. It may seem like it, and maybe in small things, maybe the massage, maybe I know the running joke is like a pizza party, right? But how many times like I've seen on Facebook, people are like, I've been at this job, I make, let's say, I'm just throwing numbers out there, 45, and then they're wanting to add on hygienist for 50.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you increase the pay of your current hygienist? So it's like you have to almost change offices, change jobs. And it's like this in the corporate where if you want to move up the ladder, sometimes it's not internal. You have to change companies altogether.
Yeah.
And I think we see that now sort of reflecting in dental. And I think it's to your point, people get comfortable at offices and it's And that may be okay for them, but not for you. So definitely, like, to your point where you said if someone's there at the office for a long time, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good practice. Or maybe the practice is like good to them, but not to you, and it's not a fit. I know for me, like, that evolved over time. Like, my fit for my practice was great, but towards like the end, towards things were changing in my life, it wasn't where I was in the beginning.
Right. Yeah. Your needs and your wants can change and develop, I think, as you find out more about yourself inside work and outside of work. Like what's important to you. Sometimes it's a commute, or, sometimes your family dynamic changes, and then like a commute has to be shorter to accommodate kids, or, there's so much that goes in.
I think going back to like what you were saying about like jobs don't like, you think that they value you or that they like are committed to you, and they aren't necessarily, and you like invest so much in them. I think that's just like a millennial thing, because I am that way. Like, I love Crest. I will like ride for Crest. And I feel like they are so invested in me, and that's why I'm so invested in them. But I've also had some really bad experiences with companies who like I get super invested in, and they're not invested in me. My last job, they didn't even announce that I was leaving. I was a director. So it wasn't just like I was a hygienist. I was like a leader in this like nonprofit, and they didn't announce that I was leaving. And then they like at 4 p.m., I was actually at a remote practice, so that I had started for them. They like logged me out of all the emails at like 4 p.m.
Wow.
Yeah. Like there was like no goodbye, no nothing, like get out of here basically. And then we had like badges, but we were like a bigger group, but we weren't even 50 employees. So it wasn't like when I worked at the university, you need your badge to like get into the door or like to swipe things. It wasn't like that. It was just like, oh, we have badges, but nobody ever wore their badges. And so I didn't know where my badge was. Like, I had no idea where my badge was. But when time came to get my check, they were trying to withhold my check because I hadn't turned in my badge. And I wrote back and I said, this really feels like harassment. And, I know for a fact that there have been other employees who have quit, who didn't turn in their badge. And I know it for a fact because they were my employees. And I know where their badges are located in my old office that I never turned in because nobody ever asked me to turn them in. And they got their check. They got their payment. Why is it for me and in my situation that you're saying you're not going to pay me because of a little plastic thing, right? And is that in our handbook? No. Actually, in our handbook, it says, and I copied and pasted what it said in my handbook, like that, they are not allowed to like deduct payment from your check for whatever X reason. And
well, it's illegal as well to withhold payment.
And I sent them like the statutes for the state of Texas. They're required, they have to pay you like X amount of time or whatever. And I was like, you want to fight me on this? I will fight you on this. They did end up paying me like after I sent that very like, these are like Texas laws. And also like, this is what your handbook says. And also this feels like harassment and discrimination, because why is it that with me, you don't want to pay me with other people you have paid them? So after like a very strongly worded email, they did like pay me. But it made me feel, I was like, I gave so much for that practice, for that ministry, that, I raised thousands of dollars. I started remote clinics. I got them portable dental equipment. I brought in so much like donations and resources and volunteers. And for what?
But did it also, it's unfortunate that that's the way it ended, but didn't it also feel like I made the right decision?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I actually got a DM from them. Basically, it was like, you still have us listed on there, like multiple exclamation points. I was like, okay. And so I went to my LinkedIn and I couldn't even find it. And I was like, in my About Me section, it had their name on there. And I was like, oh my gosh, like you really had to like look through this to like see it. And so I was like, okay, I messaged them back and I was like, I deleted it. Leave me alone. Like, it's not that serious, honestly. But yeah, also very telling. And I told them, like, I hope this is the last time I hear from y'all. Like, I really just want to be left alone. And that sometimes makes you feel like a little jaded, right? Like, and I don't think that you should be that way either. I don't think you should feel like, oh, they don't care about you or offices don't care about you. But I've heard so many stories now where like you get like fired and they don't even let you come back and pick up your stuff. Right? We'll have your stuff mailed to you.
Well, I know sometimes they do that for safety reasons because if with some disgruntled
Like
coworker.
if I've never done anything to like make you feel unsafe, And I also feel like people should be given the opportunity to like grow. If you're unhappy with the work that I am doing, let me know. Like, tell me ways that I can improve to give me the opportunity to be better, right? Like now, if we do that and I don't improve, then that's on me, right? But I don't know. I have a hard time with like the blind side of things, of like, oh, we're unhappy, we're not going to tell you that, but we're just going to fire you.
I think that, well, that's the difference between dentistry and like the corporate world is in the corporate world, that would be wrongful termination. You can't just fire someone on the spot. You would have to have sit downs with your manager, and usually it takes 3 strikes. Even if someone's awful, you have to say, hey, I need you to be able to finish your cleaning within 60 minutes. And then document times it didn't happen, sit them down, written warning, and then give them like another attainable goal. And then after they don't meet 3, then it's time for terminate. That's like how it is all other industries. But dentistry is a little different, so it could be choppy.
I'm like you, Amber. Like, I give my all when it comes to practice. Like, can you do this? Yes, I'll do it. It's like, well, do you have time? I'll make time. That was me. And that is still part of me. But I felt like I gave a lot to my practice and I overextended myself. And part of that is me as well, not building those boundaries. And I think when it came to the end of my time at the practice, like, I didn't get, to be frank, I didn't get a goodbye after so long. And
17 years.
That really hurt for me. If you're my close friend, I'm like, it's fine because I don't know any better. But I read stories where people were at a practice and they threw a party and all this stuff and did goodbye presents and whatnot and celebrated them different ways. And not that like, I need that. I wanted some, I think it would have been nice to have some kind of appreciation.
When I left UT, I know UT was sad to like let me go. They threw me a party, It was like a potluck party. It wasn't like a big old, but that meant a lot to me.
Yeah. I worked at a practice like just Saturdays, like 2 Saturdays a month, and it was like half a day. So I'm like barely there. And they gave me like stuff for like my baby shower and small gifts, and just I felt appreciated, and I was barely there,
Yeah. Okay. Care Mobile, who does the Crestor OB events with us, they're the ones who own like the dental vans. When I miscarried last year, they send me a card, and I'm not like their employee. You're like,
and that's when they appreciate
like those
you.
little things. Yeah, exactly.
And values. Yeah, I think that's like the best thing to take out of a hygiene interview is the office you're interviewing with, do they support, like, are they ethical?
Yeah.
And do they value their staff? And that's something you have to learn, and hopefully we can get into that one day. How do you read what an office's true values are? Because if you have that tickle in your chest one day that you feel expendable, it's because you are to them. And then you just got to get out, because being able to value your staff isn't something anyone's ever going to learn. It's who they are on the inside. It's not something that's ever going to grow. They could lose their staff one day, like completely. They're never going to learn that it was them.
Yeah.
They're never going to admit to any faults. That's never going to be. You can change an office's equipment. You can change and advocate for better instruments. There's certain things that I think can change, but you can't change someone's values. So if you don't feel appreciated, you got to get out and find someone that has better.
I think, trust your gut. Like when you go into an interview and automatically there's like a thing that you're like, oh, I don't really like that, but I guess I could put up with that. No, just automatically no. Because for me, like, I would get frustrated and then I would be unhappy. And then like that would impact like the care that I'm providing, like who I am as a coworker. So I think it's just like, ultimately I'm not going to be happy if that's something that's like a no deal for me and I'm trying to like be okay with it because I'm like, well, maybe I like all the other things. I think there are some things that can be like non-negotiable for you, and that is okay.
And then there's certain things too. I know, like you said, like kind of sweeping under the rug or being like, okay, I'm just going to put up with that. And then hopefully it gets better. That's what I saw with my first job, my toxic one, when I had worked there for an entire year. So I forget my rate that I had accepted as a new grad, but it was lower. And I think even talking to my friends, they had gotten higher than me. And I was like, well, okay, I'm in a good office. It's okay. And then at my year, I asked to be matched to what my friends were making around the same area. And she laughed at me. But I had talked to the office manager and she said, I think she would be okay going up $1. But we never had crossing paths with our schedule. She only worked 2 days and it was my days off. So I never saw the practice owner. So she goes, she'd be okay with you calling her, just give her a call. So I talked to her and I said, I know the going rate right now is this, and I was offered a position at this. I do enjoy working here. I was wondering if there's any way we could sit down and renegotiate my rate. And then she goes, oh, well, I don't know how you guys expect me to get this money. More than half of my income goes to payroll, is what she said to me on the phone. And I was like, what does that have to do with me? And I'm like, what? And then, but she would spend so much money on one of those consulting firms.
Oh,
and she was the top
red
tier.
flag.
Yes. So she was the top, she had their highest product. So whatever it was some outlandish number that she would pay monthly for us to be, there was flights involved to go to these trips and everything that were sponsored by this company.
Do you feel like those were worth it?
Some were, but not all of it. But the way I always saw it is if the practice owner was able to take the time that this consulting firm took away from them to really narrow in on their own practice, they could have achieved the same results. I think it was... one of the things was to get us to offer fluoride more, which, we could do that.
Talking about fluoride, I will say, I can't sell $50 fluoride.
Yes.
That's a deal breaker for me. But I was telling my husband, if we ever open up our practice, offering it to the hygienist to be okay, we offer $20 or $25 fluoride, but for every fluoride that you sell, you get $1. For $20. Or if we decide that you feel like you can sell a $25 fluoride, then maybe you get $2. And then that way the hygienist feels like they have some skin in the game, and then helps them okay, they're doing this extra work. Obviously we should be promoting it to our patients because our patients need it, and only to the patients who need it, which I think 99% of patients could benefit from fluoride. And personally, so I think, but then at least the hygienist is has some skin in it. Then it's not just oh, I'm doing this added thing for no other reason than for the practice, right? It also is benefiting you. Or same thing with the oral cancer screening or device things that you do, even that, I don't know. I feel or if you're selling whitening or you're selling occlusal trays, the hygienist should have some bonus type of system in there to support them. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, exactly. You want me to invest in your practice, but are you investing in me?
Well, with your old boss saying that, oh, what do you want me to do? Half my income already goes to payroll. What are you supposed to do with that information? Just say yes or no, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that. And then you can move on, and not have, what are you supposed to do? Feel bad and stay there? It sounds like she was venting to you. But then, okay, let me just move on.
Also, that's the hardest thing of management, because I worked in management. You worked in management, Angela, is managing people. But I think there is some point where you have to check yourself. And there were times in my career where I'm oh, I'm in the wrong and I need to check myself and I need to be better, and a lot of practice owners have never had any true management training. They don't know how to deal with people. So they're just overwhelmed and overstressed. And that's fair. That's fair. But if you chose to take on this role, then you need to then invest in yourself and grow emotionally, in your emotional intelligence. because you did choose that role. I don't know. It's hard. I would say like a tip maybe for people who are like suffering from burnout is if like maybe you just need like a little bit of a break. Maybe you need to like work. Like I like how you have like your breaks in between patients, but it could be that you work shorter days, or it could be that you work 1 day per week less. Personally, my body can't handle working 5 days per week. I could do 3. I couldn't do 5, right? I don't know, setting those boundaries where you need to set boundaries.
Yeah, that's what I was doing 5 days a week, sometimes 6 for a really long time. And then I cut down to 4, and then I cut down to 3. And I didn't realize that was what I was experiencing, burnout. I'm just thinking like, oh, this is life. I'm just having to make it through. But I'm realizing that is not a good quality of life. And you were talking about learning and growing as a manager. And I would say, I hope like the people I managed early on don't hold it against me. Some ways I handle things, because definitely I learned from that. So I hope people like show me grace and are kind. I've definitely learned, and I'm definitely different if you're listening.
I will say, I try to like own up to like my mistakes too. But I definitely wouldn't settle for mistreatment ever. For me, it's like, you show me once who you are. I'm like, all right. Because I'm somebody who, I'm respectful enough. No, I think that I am, but I am the kind of, yo no me dejo, is what they say. Like, I don't let people take advantage of me for the most part. So like, if you come at me, well, I'm gonna come right back at you. And I think it's funny because people are like, oh, Amber's so sweet and she's so nice. I was like, oh, you don't really know me. Because I don't know. I feel like I've already been through so much in my life. I was in an abusive marriage. And when I got out of that, I was like, nope, never again am I going to be in a situation where I'm mistreated. Because I don't care. Like, I don't care. I used to be an educator at a high school, and sometimes the principals and the assistant principals would get like upset and they would scream. And I was like, you know what? Doctors don't talk to me like that. If I don't let doctors talk to me like that, you're not going to talk to me like that. Like, there is no reason for the shouting and the screaming. So if you're going to come at me and you're going to act one sort of way, I'm going to act that way towards you too. I'm going to show you like, you cannot talk to me like that. I'm not going to let you let that slide. And I've worked with some amazing doctors who are like super respectful, who appreciate, for me, that's another thing. Like, I want to feel like I'm heard. Like, I want us to work as a team. So if, you coming, obviously I can't diagnose, you diagnose, but I want you to be able to also take what I'm seeing and my input and my insight to the situation. I want you to consider that. And that helps me feel like appreciated and seen, versus like those doctors who like won't listen to you, or who'll scream at you, or who'll like belittle you or berate you. Like, that's not going to fly with me. And I've worked with I'll tell you, with like my Crestor OB and the care team, they definitely respect like the value that I bring in. And I do things like, I manage all the volunteers. I tell people like what to do. And I'm like, hey, Dr. Watson, Dr. James, Dr. A, I need you to go and do this over here. I need you to go do that over there. And they're like, yeah, what do you need me to do, Amber? They'll do it. Why? Because they are confident enough in who they are as dentists, as leaders, that they don't feel like any sort of way about a hygienist telling them like, come help
They
me
don't
do
feel
something.
threatened.
They don't feel threatened,
Yeah,
because they're
that's
confident
huge.
enough, right? They're confident enough in like who they are, but I'm also confident in like, but they also value like me and my expertise and the value that I bring and my leadership and how hard I work. Like, they value those things. And I think like if we could all just like learn to like respect and value each other, that could like really, I don't know, make for better working environments.
Yeah, and work in a partnership versus a dentist is higher than a hygienist or anything like that. I do want to say, like, even when we talk about toxic offices, it's not just how they're treating us, but it's also what the kind of patient care they provide or what they have for the patients. Because some offices like throw the glitz and glam to the staff, but maybe they have one scaler, maybe they have dual instruments, and so they're like throwing that glitz and glam at you to sort of like shut you up, hush you, so you can stay there, when really, you're not providing the optimal care to the patients.
Or they overdiagnose.
Yes.
That's my other no. I can't do
I
it.
can't do that. That's a no for me.
I can't get like out of work and cry in my car every day.
Yeah.
I need to just have a healthy conscience.
I did one time at that practice where they paid me $32 an hour. They like significantly less than the going hygiene rate. They took not PPO, they took HMO. They took HMO. And so he would overdiagnose, obviously, and upsell. And so there was a patient and they spoke Spanish. And I was like, hey, go somewhere else. I told him in Spanish. And he's like, okay. I was like, yeah, you should go somewhere else. Because I did. I felt horrible. I felt like, oh my God, this person's getting scammed. They don't need an SRP. They don't need all these like things. Or there's practices who are like, oh, we're irrigating. I worked for a DSO one time. Like I was also temping. And they charged for, it was a pro fee, but they charged for desensitizing. That's a hard word to say. So I don't know if that was the fluoride. They charged for topical. I don't know, like maybe it was like anesthetic or something. They charged for irrigation per quadrant for a pro fee, dude.
Oh my
It ended up being like,
gosh.
instead of like whatever, 100, whatever, it was like $600
Oh my gosh.
because of everything they were like upcharging.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
For freaking, and if you're irrigating with chlorhexidine, that's the thing of the past. We shouldn't even be recommending chlorhexidine anymore. So definitely not irrigating. And the thing is, like, I ordered supplies, right? So like, I know fluoride cost you like $2. All right. Or like they would charge $50 for the fluoride like rinse. I'm like, that whole bottle of fluoride did not cost you like hundreds of dollars, cost you maybe like $15. And now you're charging people $50. I can't do those things.
Yeah, your ethic. Yeah, I'm with you. My ethics would prevent me I can't dangle something that someone needs or would benefit with like an overpriced price tag.
Yeah.
Then there's just no way. I mean, upcharge on whitening, like do whatever, but like don't, if someone's going to benefit from something and it's something tangible that could help them like enjoy their smile for the rest of their life, you can't, there's no way. Don't upcharge that.
Yeah. I agree.
So during like one of the first weeks I was practicing, at a practice that I was at as an assistant, so we see children up into like young adults, the college. And so she had been at a practice for a long time and always had like great hygiene, right? It was going to be prophy. And she hadn't seen us for about a year and she had gone to a general office, but she was back because her siblings had an appointment, whatnot. And then she's like, oh, just give me a child cleaning. First of all, there's a lot of like things I want to talk about with that. But she was like, I already got my deep cleaning. So I just, want the child cleaning here.
It's not a car wash. You can't just come in and press like the $6.99 special.
And I was like, okay, well, what kind of cleaning did you have? Like, because we know when they say deep cleaning, it's SRP, but I'm like, she doesn't need an SRP. So like, I looked at her x-rays and she was good. I looked in her mouth. She was good. And then sure enough, like her insurance did say that she was billed out for SRP. And I was like, and I was working with a seasoned hygienist during that time. And part of me, I was new, I was like, what do I do? Like, I want to educate her, this is not a child cleaning. I'm not just a pediatric hygienist to know to do a child cleaning. I mean, I told her like, I'm going to give you the service you need. But then I also like kindly, tactfully try to explain in a way that like, you did not need a deep cleaning. I mean, I can't say like, I don't know what they saw there, but like what I'm telling you and what I'm seeing here is that that's not what you need. But that was hard to navigate, especially as a new grad. And I'm glad I had like another hygienist there that I could like bounce off. She's like, yeah, you have to talk to her. And I'm like, you want to talk to her? It's like, no, it's your patient. I mean, I love her, but
yeah. So I think we can like end on like giving advice or like tips for hygienists who may be feeling like burnout or in a toxic place. I mean, for sure, for me, don't stay in a place if it's toxic. I think you just leave. But if you're feeling like burnout, and a part of that is like physical burnout, I would say invest in yourself. So even if your practice can't buy you like a saddle chair, can't buy you like ergo loops, or can't buy you instruments, like you also like need to invest in yourself and in your body, right? Or making like a plan with your practice. Like, hey, I know like it might cost a lot upfront to buy 10 new Cavitron inserts, but can we order like one each month? like start making like some sort of plan to help you like physically. And I think for a lot of us, like, yeah, like at least for me, like the physical pain has been like one of the hardest things for me, like in causing my burnout.
For me, it was like more the mental burnout. So I would advise, like, if you see those red flags, just follow your gut instinct. I know, like, we want to stay there, we want to be loyal, we make a pro and con list, but in the end, what's gonna happen is gonna evidently happen. And so just save yourself the mental anguish and like letting it go on for longer than you need to, and just listen to your gut.
I think that's the same with me too. I just revert back to that time where she laughed at me over the phone and I asked for a raise, and that should have been my, hey, something's off here. But then I fast forward to when we actually went through the pandemic together, and we had talked about, and at the same time, I knew I wasn't valued because of the way she laughed at me, but I stayed. And then months and months later, we go through a pandemic and we're about to return, and she had said only the dentists are going to get N95 masks. She said hygienists don't need them because we don't make as much aerosols. But I was like, I'm very respectful. So I wrote back to her. I said, with all due respect, even talking creates aerosols. I was like, so from what we're learning of this virus, the microns are very small. I would like to have an N95. But she just said, if you knew how hard they were to get right now, I can't get them. So we're going to have to... Yeah, and then
sacrifice you, basically.
And then that was just such an eye opener. I was just like, okay, so it wasn't just a wrong inkling. Like, you really don't care about us at all.
You're like, I didn't volunteer as tribute for this. Like, no.
And then we started up and running, and they even had this plastic barrier hanging over the patient for when they did crowns. It was like it came up from the patient's neck and went oblique towards the ceiling to trap their own aerosols like under the plexiglass with them. But we didn't get a single thing to protect us. So, and I think back to that. So if there's any kind of inkling that you aren't being valued, you really need to kind of deepen within that and see the truth behind it, because it's probably trying to tell you something. Just get out, because nothing's going to change.
I think to your point, with when you never worked anywhere else, and you don't know what other practices might be like, talk to your colleagues, talk to your hygiene school friends, like hear about, because now I work for a great practice, right? I imagine the three of us work for great practices, right? Like there are some places where I've been at that I've worked with some great doctors, and there's better things out there. So if you're in an experience that you feel like, oh, maybe this is toxic, talk to your classmates, talk to DM us, ask us, is this normal? And we'll tell you, like, honestly, whether we think if it's normal or not. I think that the thing is, if you're somewhere toxic, and this was a thing for me, was I quit my job and I didn't take on another job. I did take like time off, and I am definitely privileged in the sense that I had savings and I was able to take time off to like readjust, because I was definitely like suffering from burnout, and I just needed a break from like dentistry altogether. I just needed a little bit of like time off, and I was able to take some of that time off, but also doing things like meditations in the morning, helping my mind get into like the right mindset and getting out of like that funk and that negative thinking. Doing breathing exercises really helped me too, like even like with my patients, if I'm like being anxious, or in between patients, maybe getting to a room that has some sunlight, like when I'm in a practice.
That, like, reset button.
Yeah, it is those like reset things. But like sometimes you just need a room that has like light. See if you can like switch out your room. Mindfulness. I don't know if y'all talk about like ever heard about mindfulness, but like being like in the moment. So right now, instead of thinking about like, oh my gosh, all the things I have to do when I get home later, you're thinking about like, wow, like what a great time I'm having, like hanging out with Angela and with Amy, just, talking, right? So thinking of the same things, like when you're in your chair with your patient, enjoy like the care that you are providing that patient, the difference that you're making in that patient in that moment, and trying to like, when you can, let go of the other things and worry about the problems when the problems come. But we thank you all so much for listening to us. I appreciate Amy and Angela for sharing their stories, and we hope that you'll continue to listen to us every week. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Positively Hygiene.
Join us every Tuesday for a new episode.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram for the opportunity for how you can contribute to our podcast.
And follow and review Positively Hygiene on Apple and Spotify podcast.